Yes.
What we're doing?
Not used to microphones. I don't have any interest in Strathaven stories, unfortunately. I'm an East Kilbride's man myself. Not anymore, but that's where I was brought up. So I'm a Newtown boy. The other thing I definitely want to say, if anyone finds a pair of glasses, not that I've been nervous about tonight or anything like that,
We all start looking for them,
but as long as you haven't sat on them, that's it. Sitted, I don't know what's the past tense.
Are they horn ribs or the rimless?
They're rounds, kind of a horn rim. So obviously nobody's found them, or they've got them in their back pocket. Well, thanks very much for coming and hearing numbers. It's incredible, actually. I was quite taken aback when I walked into the room because I wasn't here this afternoon in the setup, but I just think it looks amazing. It's got an amazing feel, so I'm hoping this won't be the last time that we have an event like this. So just a wee bit of an explanation. What you'll be listening to tonight in terms of the writers, they're all here sitting in the front row, they've got the deer seats, is a journey. So we have a journey from initial ideas having, and then the idea of you think you've got a book in you and you want to publish it. That could be a long road. So I've kind of helped to shortcut that journey. So I've been in a very fortunate position of either finding people or people approaching me who happen to be very talented, as you'll hear as the night goes on. We have one writer, Katy Lironi, who will be well known if you're a local, and happens to be married to Douglas. She's publishing her memoir later in the year, probably about autumn time. So she's at an early stage. She's done blog writing and short stories before, but this will be her first full feature film. So she's at that very early stage, and then we'll go through to someone who is a very experienced writer, but again it's their debut novel, and it comes out in May, so it's very soon. David Belcher, he'll be known by a lot of you as a journalist who used to do was it the Glasgow Herald at the time, or the Herald?
I started on the Glasgow Herald.
Yeah. David's written for the NME, Marxism Today, you name it. So
Radio Times.
Radio Times, don't forget the Radio Times.
NME.
NME, yeah. So David's about to have his debut novel out, so he's at the next stage, and then I'm going down the line here. George is now on his second book with Into Books. George and I were friends before there was any talk of publishing. He said to me that he had a manuscript, and I went, oh no, because when a friend gives you something, you go, it better be bloody good, I gave the caveat that I would read the manuscript, but it would take me a long time to get through it. I'm a slow reader. It's fair enough. So we parted ways, and about 3 hours later, I sent him a photograph, and I was on page 72, and I said, we'll need to talk. So that was the start of a beautiful publishing relationship. That particular book, the Gillian, the writer and the fighter, ended up shortlisted for the Bloody Scotland crime debut of the year in 2022, which if you have any concept of how many books are considered for something like a national competition like that, it's quite amazing to be shortlisted, and well deserved. On to the second book, I'll not say too much more than that. The second book is different from the first book, which was quite expansive. It was set in America and London and Paris, and across decades. The next book is set in the West End of Glasgow, so it's easy to film if there's any filmmakers out there. And a fictitious island called Westerwick. and it's going towards the macabre horror, I would imagine, you could call it that. I won't say any more than that, I'll let George explain more. And we have David Cameron. I'm Stephen Cameron, getting a connection. So that's my brother David. David's book was the first book that I ever published, called Prendergast Falls. You'll see it out there if you want to buy it on the way out. And that was one of these things that I think I'd done the original concept from a dream, and you come back 5 years later with the book. And it's amazing. It's a very difficult book to explain. Good luck, David. But David's a veteran of publishing, so he is eight publications, including 5 novels, critiques. He's very well experienced in the publishing world, much more than I am. And then next, I have Gillian Shirreffs. Gillian was directed towards me with no prior relationship at all, and initially the meeting was about me designing the cover of her book, and she gave me the manuscript, and then the next time I met her, I asked if I could publish it, because she was going to go down the road of self-publishing, but the book, as anyone that's read it or is about to buy it will discover it is absolutely incredible. Again, I wouldn't say too much about it, I'll leave that up to Gillian. She has a very, very interesting personal story. I don't know how much she'll tell you about that, but it does impacted on the subject matter of the book. And I'll leave it at that, because there's some people falling asleep. This evening is going to be chaired by Alistair Braidwood, who's probably, in my opinion, the topmost cultural commentator.
I bet you say that to all the chairs.
I only have one chair.
Oh, that's true.
So thank you very much for coming again. Thank you.
And before I get to talk to both of you about your books, I think a couple of readings would be in order. Katy, could you kick us off? I don't know, actually, if Stephen mentioned the name of the book, it's Matilda in the Middle. We'll hear all about that later.
I will kick off. Stimulating. Okay, so I'm just reading a couple of excerpts from this book, and as Stephen mentioned, it's a memoir, and it's a family memoir, but it's a musical, memoir as well. There we go. I would look at it. Slap down there. Okay. So this starts with chapter 2, and this is me just, chapter 1 is all about sort of childhood and childhood musical memories. It's really focusing on music, and this is me heading off to college. So it is called Upside Down by the Jesus and Mary Chain. I left home reluctantly. A dungaree wearing immature 18-year-old who didn't fit at school and had no idea what I was looking for. Come through the new romantic years with a passing interest in Blancmange Panorama and Heaven 17, but I still felt that something was missing. I hadn't found my niche. Shy to the point of carrying books around with me to fill any lurking gap in the conversation, I had discovered boys, cider, and had one best friend. Missing out on the chance to study English at university by 1 grade, I found myself on my way to Edinburgh to study publishing at Napier College. I didn't realise that this was the right doorway opening, behind which lay all the stripy t-shirts and anoraks an awkward socially inept girl from UK could possibly hope for. It was like the scene I'd been pining for, without even knowing such a thing existed. Within weeks, I had been recruited into the ranks of a burgeoning C86 band. C86, for anyone who doesn't know, is a kind of a musical genre. This was actually 1984, but C86 came with all of these bands and music came to be known as. So the band was the Fizzbombs. Not only that, but I had a fellow C86 boyfriend, complete with stripy t-shirt and flat top hair, and a new back home best friend, Anne, drummer with the shop assistants, and bass player with the Fizzbombs, neither of which were instruments that she had much history with, and that was kind of the point of C86, It was total DIY. We all learned as we went along. The noisier, more feedback and shambling, the better. So it was apt that I was recruited as the singer in this context of innovation and trial and error. My life as it was to become had begun, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. It was 1984. Guitars were loud and fuzzy. Our drummer was learning as we went along, as we all were, and no one had heard of a capo. None of the songs were in my key, and even if they had been, I didn't know what my key was. I had huge imposter syndrome, while also feeling I was in exactly the right place at the right time with the right group of people. The rehearsal rooms on Blair Street were something out of a different era. Pre-gentrification, pre-sanitation, pre-anything. It was basically a semi-derelict building full of damp old bits of broken furniture and some basic equipment. But that's where we met religiously, 3 hours a week throughout my 3 years at college, and gradually the nerves became manageable. Our first gig was 3 short weeks after starting practicing together and was held at Wilkie House, legendary Edinburgh venue in the Cowgate. How to describe that particular form of panic, preparing for something you've always wanted to do, but have never done, and know you're woefully unprepared for. The gig was shambling, but we more or less got through it. There were a few false starts. I gripped the mic stand and didn't let go for the entire 15 minutes. Fear etched on my face. The audience was awash with stripy t-shirts and floppy fringes, and they seemed friendly enough. Someone called Fergus joined us on stylophone for Fireball XL5. And suddenly it was over. Euphoria, I had done it. The lure of the stage and the desire to perform was born. College would go on to consist of some lectures, discovering pints of snakebite, band rehearsals in that same dingy, damp rehearsal room, weekly gigs at the Onion Cellar, recording a 7-inch single for indie label Narodnik, gracing the centre pages of the NME, and making a video with Douglas Hart of the Jesus and Mary chain. Fizz Bombs supported the likes of the Pastels, Tallulah Gosh, Shop Assistants, Vaselines, BMX Bandits, what seemed like every other weekend. And we recorded a couple of journeys-long BBC Radio 1 sessions. Everything was terrifying and incredibly exciting in equal measure, yet also seemed very, very normal. So that's a wee bit of chapter 2. And the book is kind of in 2 halves. So the whole thing about the book is it's about music. So we've got the first side and then we've got the second side. And the second side is once I grew up properly and had children when I was quite old. So this is based about how many years after that? 22 years? Yeah, 22 years after that. And this is chapter, a little bit from, I think it's chapter 9 or something like that. So this is called It's My Party by Leslie Gore / Bluebird of Happiness by the Mojave 3. So all the titles are all the chapter titles are song titles. And this is some poems inspired by the arrival of the twins. So the twins are numbers 4 and 5 of the Douglas and Mice. Douglas and anyway, our children. and life was quite chaotic before they arrived, and then it just went up a level. So it's called Bringing Them Home. My scar leaks where the 2 car seats sit in the suddenly tight-fitting living room, bearing the new twin rulers of this over-egged roost. What have we done? My unvoiced thinks. What have we become? I sit silently among and out with this commotion we have created between us. I notice my sister is still here, scared to look at her in case she disappears. I'll stay tonight, I think I hear, before deflating in silent thanks. The 5-year-old leaps court jester-like over the precious bundle car seats, a puppy. Look at me, look at me, look at me, mum, 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 look at me, look at me, look at me now. Boy. The babies float safe and sleep-land beneath his crazed feet, unaware. The 6-year-old wants to wake them, to snuggle, to help, to have and to hold, calm, unfazed. She's been here before. The 2-year-old bangs her head off the wooden floor, again and again and again, in pre-speech confusion. Words are an arduous uphill hike, but her signs are pure mime artist delight, and her actions yell help. Why are we so blind? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I count these children that are suddenly mine, and wonder when this extra special toddler of ours will stop battering their head off the floor and realise these babies are here to stay, forever changing the shape of this world that won't go away.
Thank you very much, Katy. And David, can we have a reading from yourself?
Yes. Hello, Strathaven. Looking good. I'll just do a slight preamble. This novel concerns a Mr. Tony Moscadini, who used to be a journalist, who used to work in Glasgow. He's given all that up to return to the land of his ancestral forebears, Italy. And he's living in the most Scottish town in Italy, which I've called Colonia, but in fact, as any Scots Italian knows, the most Scottish town in Italy is in fact Barga, and Barga kind of inspired this novel. But Tony has left Glasgow, left journalism, and he is enjoying life in Italy. He's been there for 2 years. He's beginning to think that maybe Italy is a little bit too safe and predictable, and maybe he misses the old excitements, the old temptations that were on offer in Glasgow. And he has to go back to Glasgow for a weekend, and who knows what terrors and temptations will rear up to meet him. And this is a little way short of the book's halfway stage. He's in Glasgow, it's Saturday, and he's decided to wander around and pay a sort of pilgrimage to former haunts, which include a record shop, a number of record shops, but one record shop in particular called Faster Louder. When he walked into Faster Louder, it greeted him with a comforting smell of mildew, weed smoke, perspiration, unwashed denim, crushed dreams, the homecoming scent of music. The shop's linoleum floor was sticky, pockmarked and dirt blackened. Its rough-hewn wooden bins held miles of second-hand vinyl LPs and CDs. He estimated several days could be spent flicking through those racks without seeing everything. The store's owner was lifting a hinged flap in the counter and retreating through it to perch on a tall stool at Tony's approach. He was in his mid to late 50s, about Tony's age, a similar veteran of the post-punk indie era, small feet in scuffed black winkle pickers, skinny black jeans, a voluminous black Brooklyn Dodgers button-through baseball tunic held tight to Mr. Faster Louder's broad midsection, whereafter he tapered away to a tiny head displaying ice cream wisps of white hair, his complexion sausage roll grey, buddy holly specks, and snowy soul patch beneath his lower lip, evoking a rhomboidal long-lost nephew of Billy Connolly. The shop's workforce, a slender, omni-gendered youth leaning on the counter, sported an equally arresting look. Head shaven at the sides, purple quiff, eyes shaded a delicate metallic blue that somehow didn't clash with his, her, their gingery moustache. Mr. Faster Louder favoured Tony with a glare of semi-recognition and began lambasting some absent staff member for his manifold flaws. His timekeeping, his lackadaisical approach to salesmanship. I once heard him tell a customer he didn't have the new Springsteen when he was leaning his stupid see-nothing elbow on a pile of the damn things, and his peerless ability to misfile things in the shop's backroom vaults. This vehement and, to Tony's ears, amusing rant went on to include the absentee's over-large and spidery handwriting and his ongoing failure to master the alphabet. This next section contains swearing. I'm sure you won't be too upset by it. If it was left to him, our racks would have the world's biggest T section. Every fucking band that ever gave themselves a fucking name starting with the filed in there. The Beatles, the Doors, the goddamn Rolling Stones, the fabulous Thunderbirds, the shitting Style Council, all in the one fucking T section. 4 cunting miles long and as wide as a fucking house. You'd never be able to find a cock-sucking thing. I'm glad you appreciate swearing. The rest of the novel, there's not a great deal of swearing. Sorry. Mr. Faster Louder was multitasking, resolute in dispensing insults, while also ignoring the shop's one other potential customer, a peculiar-looking man in stained double denim with a bony grinning face that was mostly yellow teeth. Worse still, the mal-toothed, skull-faced, disregarded customer stank of urine, the reek bad enough to make Tony backpedal into the shop's furthest corner, holding his breath. The unfortunate man held a CD case in one hand and spoke loudly, insistently, grinning, repeating himself over and over again. CDs, aye. Vinyl, aye. AC/DC, aye. Hawkwind, aye. Motorhead, aye. He placed the CD case on the counter. Mr. Fasterlouder didn't move. He'd heard it all before. The strange, stinking, grinning man went off on what was plainly another recurring tangent. When you buy a hi-fi, aye, is it the amp that's more important or the speakers, is it? Aye, he asked. The amp, aye, the speakers, is it? The amp, aye, no the speakers? Or what about the turntable, is it? Aye. The omni-gendered youth offered a steady flow of patient but absent-minded interjections. Well, Derek, that's one way of putting it, he, she, they murmured. I guess it's down to personal preference, Derek. There's no hard or fast rule. It's how it sounds to the individual, I suppose. It was almost, but not quite, a conversation. Tony had never realised record retail staff shared skills with mental health care professionals. Neutralise and deflect, pacify and absorb. Once upon a time, he supposed, working in a record shop must have involved finding things out before anyone else, being in the know, informing and guiding public taste, feeling superior to the common herd, getting free stuff. But no more. Same as journalism.
Thank you very much, David. And if you were laughing at that, I can promise you the whole novel is that funny. It really does run right through it. But Katy, starting with you, I've got a bit of a warning for people about Matilda in the Middle, because when I was reading it, I was in tears quite a lot. No, but in a really joyful way. It's how I would describe it. It's bursting with love, the whole book. How do you describe it to people? How do you think of it? Because you have been writing it for a while, I think.
How do I describe it to people? I never have, because it's very private. It goes out there online.
Is this a mistake? If publishing this a mistake?
I don't know, ask my children probably. I think I had what I thought of as two separate things that I was writing, and I talked to Douglas about it, and he was able to sort of rein me in to. I actually had one book there, and both stories were important and how to put them together. So it's good to have someone to bounce ideas off.
That's very handy, definitely.
It is. It's very handy. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's it's a story about family. It's a story about music and how music is important to our family. So I know some parts are, lots of families have got things in them that you're going to cry, but hopefully you're also going to laugh, and I think
and you do.
laughs.
And the music references are fantastic. I was wondering how much joy you took in going back and, because all the musical references are kind of linked to points in your life and other people's lives and real high points. Was that a kind of joyous thing to be able to do?
Yeah.
Put together a track listing, if you like.
Yeah, it was, and it would be really lovely to put together a track listing to go with it. Stephen, sorry.
An album.
Let's do something wonderful. So, I mean, that was a very big part of my life. I mean, music growing up was really important, and then, moving off to college and being able to be actively part of it was really important, and that's continued, and it's continued with our own children. So, yeah, it made sense for that to be the focus of it. And I think really, it was years and years and years ago I read Tracy Thorn's first book, and I just loved it. And I went away we lived in a different house then, and we had a wee room out the back, a wee sunroom, and I went away in there and I just started writing, and it just all came really easily. The writing is the easy part, putting it together into something cohesive is the harder part, as I'm sure anyone would.
And there's also, you read one of the poems from the book as well, and did you write those for the book, or were you already collecting them? I guess you were already collecting them because of what they're doing.
A lot of it was, it definitely took, it's taken the best part of 24 years to pull together. I mean, he got the idea there were 5 of them. So I had, I've written stuff since I was at school, and I did used to actually, submit things and have things published in some nice magazines and anthologies and things, but that kind of all fell apart, and my writing was more focused on songwriting, because I was in bands in college, and then Douglas and I have been in bands, so that was kind of the creative outlet, and it was more immediate, and it was easier, and it's shorter. It's only 3 minutes. It's a song. It's out there, and you don't have to spend so long worrying about it and changing it. And I think the older I got, the more I got, oh, that's not quite right. Okay, I'll just put that under my bed. And I used to deride people that wrote things and put them under their beds for 20 years, and I've become that person.
And you're quite a serious reader at a young age, because you reference Camus and Orwell and Plath, I think, is the other one as well. So reading's been a big part of it, and it feeds into the book too. Yeah,
I was just that was it. I mean, I grew up going to libraries, and that's my mum's a big reader. She's here, so she passed that on, and music was a big thing in our house as well. So that's what I did as a kid. We didn't have round-the-clock TV, so I read.
And you did a degree in publishing, is that right?
Yes.
So has that fed into getting this book published?
I don't think so.
No. Do you know the theory? It's about, I trained as a chef, and then you work in restaurants, and it's a very different thing from the...
Yeah, it was like 35 years ago. It was basically like printing presses when I was there. It was just pre-digital, so almost as soon as we did our course, it was obsolete. So no, I've never used it. I mean, I know some people still in publishing who went into it, but
no.
That's where, I mean, for me, going to college was about C86. So for me, going to college was, I walked into my college class, and the people in my college class, and next door was the printing class, and everyone, if people know about C86, these are not big, famous bands, it's very niche, but it was the shop assistants, it was Fizz Bombs, it was Rockpell, Jesse Garden, and these people were all, we were all in the NME every week. We were on Radio 1 every other week, so it just happened. It was the right place to be at the right time, and that's what I said at the end. It just felt really normal. Nobody thought we were 18. We just thought, wow, that's what happens when you come to college.
Yeah, but you kind of went to college with that in mind. It was bands.
No, not at all. No,
because
because I'd grown up as the sort of the wee sister of musical brothers.
Yeah.
So I just kind of got a wee bit derided of.
Because you did a kind of living room audition, didn't you? And you said that affected you deeply.
Battered down in flames, and my brother was like, yeah, okay, sing for me and we'll see, and guffawing and laughing at me. So no, it was a bit of a laughing stock. I don't mean that negatively. It was just one of those Scottish families where I was like, good enough. No, my brothers were very musical, and I wasn't. It was a different kind of thing that I had, and it took me a wee bit longer to grow into it. So I was keen, but no, it didn't happen until I left. So
you should probably say for people who don't know why the book's called Matilda in the Middle.
So Matilda in the Middle is, as my 4 other kids go, all right, it's because she's your favourite. No, it's because she's in the middle, and her name's Matilda. And so Matilda is the middle child. She's here, I presume, or maybe not. She says she doesn't like book reading, so she's going to sit out in the bar and do her colouring in. So Matilda had a fairly eventful entry into the world, and was very, very ill when she was born, and she was in intensive care for 3 weeks, and it was all a bit touch and go and a bit scary at the time, and she was diagnosed with Down syndrome when she was born, and it's just really the story of her place in our family and her place in the world, and also the importance of music to her life, because it's a massive part of her life, and it's probably she's opened our eyes to a different side of music and a different way of appreciating music. So there's that aspect.
And it very much is a family affair, the book. Yeah, right across. I'm sure you all have questions. If you could, you'll be able to ask them of Katy later on. There'll be loads of time when you're talking books and chatting and everything, because We now move on to David Belcher, and this book, you can see behind me, The Newspaper Man is What It Is. How do you describe that to people like yourself who ask you?
What's this book about?
Yes.
It's about stupid men and smarter women.
That's a great synopsis of it, I have to say.
And it's about this. My central figure's, he's on a bit of a journey of self-discovery, although I kind of downplay that. And it's about, the idea came to me when we holidayed in Barga, and I originally wrote a 12-page kind of synopsis in about 2010 or something, and then left it for years, and it became a lockdown project when I'd had a week's worth of doing DIY around the house and realised I'm not very good at this, so I might as well try and write a novel. And by Christmas I'd got 115,000 words, so I knew I had I had more than enough words for a novel, and the problem then was to cut them back to about the 80,000 words that I've got now. So I've mostly the right words, more or less in the right order.
And I get the feeling you really enjoyed writing it, would I be right?
No, I didn't enjoy it at all.
No, really?
I really didn't enjoy it.
There's just the use of language, I guess that's what your job is and has been. I'm particularly thinking of a great line about the decline of Morrissey, which I loved and will use myself.
Oh, right. Feel free. Yeah.
No, but there's lots of lines in it like that, and you've already heard from the reading, you know, the kind of playing on words and imagery and all of that stuff. So you don't get enjoyment out of that? Or is it hard work?
It was hard work. It's not like working down a mine, but it was hard work.
I'm glad you said that.
I enjoyed having it finished, and I was helped to get it finished by Stephen, who I was guided to coincidentally, accidentally, really luckily, fortunately, by a chance meeting with a mutual pal on the Glasgow West End's Boulevard of Dreams, Byres Road. I met someone on Byres Road, and I was bemoaning the fact that I've got a novel but nobody wants it, and he guided me to Stephen, and 18 months later we're on the verge of publishing this novel, because Stephen initially was very, very positive about lots of different things that he found in the novel, but he was also really, really acute in giving me constructive criticism, telling me about all the things that didn't work, and I knew they didn't work, and he also provided me with an editor that I could work with, and me and Paul Marsh, the editor, worked together very productively to remedy all the faults. Well, hopefully we've remedied all the faults that were there. But I was just very, very lucky to meet someone, because I think I'd sent a synopsis off to a Scottish publisher and didn't hear anything. And then I submitted to, I think there's only really one Scottish agent, whose name I shall not mention.
It's JB.
It might be. But she threw open her lists. She does it annually, I think, and you know, there's an internet troll. Send me your synopses of novels. I sent mine in. Again, I didn't expect to hear anything. I didn't expect to hear from a publisher. I didn't think anybody was really waiting in desperate urgency to publish my novel. I heard nothing back from her, and then it struck me that she'd said, if you don't hear from us, then you're not going to hear from us. If you don't hear from us by December the 21st, then that's it. And I just thought, you've really, whether by accident or design, set people up to be waiting until 2 or 3 days before Christmas to hear that whether they are or whether they aren't going to have a novel published. Anyway, who needs agents?
Did you approach the writing of the novel differently than you do your journalism, or is it all writing?
I think I approached it in a journalistic way, which was stacking up the numbers of words, because in journalism all that matters, well, not all that matters, but one of the things that matters is the word count to fill the hole that your article has been allotted. It doesn't have to be longer, and it shouldn't be less. No, it was just a task. I set myself to sit down every day for 3 or 4, 5, 6 hours and type, and that was it.
And considering, we're going to hear some music in a moment, there is a lot of music in the book as well. I wondered, are your 3 favourite Scottish albums the same as Tony's?
think they more or less are. Yes, you're now going to ask me what they are. One of them is the Blue Nile Walk Across the Rooftops. Trash Can Shirreffs is another one, I forget which album I actually named.
Happy
Pocket.
Yeah, Happy Pocket,
that's
yeah.
it. And then the third one, I can't remember.
Dundonian.
Oh, Michael Mara, Gale's Blue by Michael Mara, which is almost unobtainable. But 3 great albums.
Again, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for David. You will have the chance to ask them later on. But we are going to have a break and have some fantastic music. So first of all, if you want to go and charge your glasses, get a drink and whatever.
This is a little set we put together inspired by the kind of music that I was exposed to and listening to and part of during those Edinburgh days. So that's the 86 type thing. So when I arrived in Edinburgh, suddenly it was I was really desperate to get away from East Kilbride, and when I arrived in Edinburgh, everyone looked really cool, and they thought East Kilbride was just the pinnacle of cool, which I couldn't quite get my head around. And it was because a band called the Jesus Mary Chain was from East Kilbride. I was from East Kilbride. I didn't know this band. I was more into sort of Plastic Camera and Orange Juice and stuff like that. So anyway, I very quickly got to know quite a lot about the Jesus and Mary Chain. So we're going to sing a song called Upside Down.
Baby Honey?
Yeah, okay, so this is a song called Baby Honey by a band called Pastels, which was one of the bands that the band I joined in college, Fizzbombs, started supporting quite a lot, and I really like the lyrics of this song, and it kind of makes me think about a story which was just after you were born, Matilda, and Douglas and I went for our first night out after Matilda was born, and we went to the Archies to see Gorky's Exotic Monkey, was it? Or was it just Eros?
No, you'll attend.
Oh, you okay, it's different than my memory. Who we went to see. I believe that. We went to the Archies to see a band, let's put it that way. And it felt like quite a big deal because we'd been in the hospital for quite a long time, and it felt like quite a big deal to leave the kids with my mum. Stephen Pastel from the Pastels and I, we'd crossed paths for 20 years. We had known each other during this period, but we hadn't actually probably ever spoken to each other. And Stephen crossed the room in the Archies, and he came over to us and he just said, "It's really nice to see you. I know you've been having quite a hard time." And I just thought it took a lot of courage for him, I think, to come and say that, and I just really appreciated it. And now when I sing the songs, nothing to do with that, but I just think the lyrics are really lovely. So if I can see them,
Just make them up.
there could be quite a lot of making them up going on. I mean, cassette, which is what the sort of genre music came to be known as, C86. So it's Velocity Girl. Here she comes again, with vodka in her veins, and playing the all night. She couldn't get it right. Splendor in silver dress, Patersons they were one of the most successful of the 86 bands, and they were all in publishing or printing the same year in 1984 when I went to college. So this is some arrangement.
Just to see if there's a better world for me. Sailing down the Atlantic in a bright red and blue sampan. She knows the only way to go is real slow. Here we go to New York City in an aeroplane made out of metal things with bright green wings. Beside me here, and we'll watch the fire go down. Dream about the days when we were young. Time seems to go much faster, living in the cold old city, but we can still pretend we're having fun. Time seems to go much faster, living in the cold old city, but we can still pretend we're having fun. Having fun. Having fun.
Right, go, I'm going to watch you this time. Go.
I don't know if I know you, do you know me? Do you still like me? Will you remember? Will you give me a finger she?
different stages in your writing career. So I think it'd be really interesting to kind of get a chat between ourselves. It means I have less work to do as well when we do that. But first of all, we're going to hear a reading from David Cameron. David, what are you going to read for us?
Well, I have one book published by Into Books called Prendergast Fall, but I'm going to exploit this opportunity and read from another novel that was published in April called Fenker, and also a few poems, if I can get away with that, Stephen.
Yes.
So, Prendergast Fall, as Stephen said, he actually gave me the idea for it. He had it wasn't a dream, Stephen, it was a vision that you had back in 2010. I think you were under a bit of stress at the time, about a vision of like a man falling through space and encountering scenes from his life. So this idea intrigued me, and I thought, so I told this story. It was like from death to birth. That was the way it was written. So you could say it was like maybe a suicide, someone falling through space, and the moment of impact is their birth. I know that isn't a very cheery concept, but if you think about it, the reasons for the being on the ledge would diminish as you get closer to childhood. But the thing about it, and one of the reasons why I actually didn't go to any other publisher but offered it to Stephen, was I wrote it in such a way that you could flip the book over and you could read it the other direction, so from birth to death. And I thought no other publisher is going to double their costs. So anyway, this short scene is just when Martin Prendergast, who does have some artistic talent, but chooses a life of business. He's kind of more of an everyman, but he does have this sort of meets his soulmate, but it's a bit too late in life. He's already married, and he can't leave his wife, and this woman decides to end the relationship. So, quietly holding hands, as if there were no more words to say, on a bench in the meadows on a cold November day, she in her white tunic, white shoes wetted by grass. I think she will feel different after a good sleep. Stop myself from saying, you will feel different after a good sleep. I've seen this coming, but now that it does, surprises me. Caught an afternoon train to Waverley especially, should have got off at Haymarket. No plans other than to be together. Presumptuous in her eyes. Not letting me in today. Will sit tantalizingly close to her room. I feel it at my back. The dark glass. No watcher in the shade, except my old self of days ago. The time I let myself out. Stood at the window and surveyed the scene, in which I now sit, quietly holding her hand, but not close, have to stretch to reach. Her hand limp by her side, meekly accepting mine, or defiantly lifeless. White tunic, red hair, green grass. Hard not to notice colour, or the geometry of the park. Go over this again in my mind. It will be emblazoned on it. You touch a face and it's gone, or you don't touch a face and it's still gone, or the face changes, expands like a map unfolding. You visited here and here, but not here, and now you never will. This place on the face that you never visited will not be here anymore for you to touch. I have divined this through a fog of my own devising. No more I. And at that point in the anti-novel, as I like to call it, it changes from the first person to the third person. The other way around, in reverse. So I want to read a very short extract, because I know it's a bit cheeky, from this novel, Femke, which is set in Amsterdam, where I lived for a few years. And it's really the story of a young woman who lives almost on the streets, and she's taken up kind of as a muse figure by this filmmaker in the first half and an elderly poet in the second half. And in the second half, you're not quite sure if it's like a poet muse or father-daughter type of relationship. But I'm just going to read a very short scene, and it's the poet is this fictitious poet, Michiel de Koning, and he's with his friend Paul van der Voort, and they're both poets. Michiel is more successful than the other, and they're both dying. One's about to die. This is the last conversation they have together. There are cheery bits in my books, by the way. We had an interesting time, didn't we, Michiel? We did. I'm sorry it didn't work out for you over there. Michiel waved his hand. Forgive me for not having been a better friend. Likewise. Here we are, trying to say the most important things, unable to. We said them in our poems. You did. I never succeeded. Even one good line is a kick against the pricks, Michiel said, half in English. Did I write one? Yes. Remind me. And this is Femke speaking. I thought for an awful moment that Michiel wouldn't manage till he said, love has gnawed us to the bone. That isn't too shabby now. So that's the end of the fiction. And by the way, I was a guinea pig for Into Books. You'll notice these beautiful banners. There's no Prendergast's fall.
It's an anti-banner.
So I'm going to read, I saw it in the scene, in the publicity for this. I'd mentioned a poem of mine that's included in a school textbook in the Republic of Ireland. So it's probably my most famous poem, called Night Singing. I'm not going to, I'll try and just remember. So this was composed for my daughter when she was a baby. She was in my arms at the time, and I was singing to her, but the lines of the poem started to come into my head, and the last line, which is sort of the meaning of the poem, basically I didn't know what the last line would be till it came. Night Singing. There comes a time in singing to a child, as the small limbs grow limp and the breaths deepen, that you become aware of weight. It's then you hear your voice, and in it something wild. Why do fears come? Nothing on any shelf can tell you in this place of simple rhyme. The child's asleep and has been for some time. You're only singing now to soothe yourself. Thank you. I chose the next poem because I don't know if you know Gillian Carmichaels, lives in Strathaven, anyone. She was a neighbour of mine, Gillian Robinson, and I haven't seen her for, I don't know, God knows, 40 years. And she said she was coming tonight and she's not here. But I'm seeing her, she couldn't come, and I'm seeing her on Monday. But anyway, there's a poem I wrote which was about her birthday party. I don't know, we were about 6 or 7, and I cheated at pin the tail on the donkey. And I won a red licorice. This is my shame. It's called Sweet Cheat Gone, which is a weird title, but it's a chapter in the translation of Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, and I was the sweet cheat. It's ages ago now, I won a prize unfairly in Mrs. Robinson's living room. Looking back, I see Mrs. Robinson knew fine well what I was doing, wrinkling my nose to twitch the blindfold up a bit. I pinned that donkey's tail a little too precisely, Mrs. Robinson, didn't I? God knows why it's back again, that lost illicit love of victory and licorice at any cost. My shame lifting the blindfold a little in Mrs. Robinson's living room. I timed this, you gave me 10 minutes. Oh yeah, I didn't time the stuff I was going to say already. I've got a new book of poems called Red Dress. I'm going to read, I was going to read two, but I'll read one. This is called Empire Orwell. My dad, who died, we're all very young, but I was the youngest of four boys, so I was especially young. He did his national service in Korea, and we had his kit bag, and it had the SS Empire Orwell on it, so that was the troop ship that he got back. He took back from Korea, and before he married my mum. So this was me imagining, there were letters that he wrote to her, but they've disappeared, they're gone. And this is me imagining what he might have wanted to say to my mum in the wee bit. I'm on the Empire Orwell bound for you. You're present with whatever's delicate, packed tight in my kit bag wrapped in clothes. Expect your loving landlubber's safe return. I'm scribbling this while feeling in my bones the turbine's thrum and drift back to Bundoran, your belted summer dress, the sand dunes. Here, men sprawl in deck chairs on an actual deck, our only enemy's Red Sea heat. The scant "Sir, yes, sir," or saluting now. Good God, may it could be the Waverley, us if we're blessed our kids in Rothsay Bay. My mind and body ache for you. I'll blow Shenandoah on my mouthie, soft and low. So one last point, because I promised I would read this.
One last.
See if you put a banner behind you.
Sorry.
This is a love poem for a woman who told me that her favourite film was Now Voyager, Betty Davis film, which ends with her saying, don't let's ask for the moon, we have the stars. And then I wrote a poem for her that ends, ask for the moon. And then I thought, that was a bit disparaging to the stars, so it's called Fate. Silence is a place where we can roam together, perfectionist, procrastinator, in this we are one. But Eros insists on the friction of difference. Dressing casually or smartly, arriving late or early, in place of a row, will do for now. So we lose or bring hope, avert or court disaster. We can be perfect later. What counts for perfection is the peak of the mountain. We're here on a slope. The moon, like your name, clear and pure, still has to be asked for, but nothing bars the ungovernable stars. Thank you. Very sorry, Steve.
Thank you. So Brodie is the story of 6 women over a 30-year period, and it's told by an object that connects them, which is a copy of The Crime of Miss Jean Brodie, who is our narrator. So we're starting about 2/3 of the way into the book with Laurel, who's the 4th of the 6 women, and it's now 2014. The book started in 1988. There's not much romance in Brodie, and after I've read this, you might still think there's not much romance in Brodie, but as it's Valentine's week, I thought I would read this section to you. And if the light's okay, so if I have to shout at some point, just... Someone give me a flashlight. The front door opened, admitting Laurel and a man I could not quite make out due to the narrow angle of the door and my inconveniently restricted view of the hallway. His voice was quiet, but there was, thank you, but there was something about the quality of it that made me think I might find him rather intriguing. Laurel pushed wide the door of the sitting room. In accented tones, I heard the male voice say, "I'll go in, shall I?" "Please," Laurel said. "I'll be with you in a minute." The man was a disappointment. He was no more than an overgrown boy with a deep voice, a foreign accent, and an Adam's apple that protruded more than was normal. Cedric, as I would learn he was called, looked uncertain as he took a seat in the spot I knew to be Laurel's. Before she entered the room, perhaps sensing his mistake, the young man moved to the opposite sofa. He released the large canvas bag that had been slung over his shoulder and let it fall to the floor. Laurel's head appeared around the door. "I should have asked," she said. "Tea?" "No," he said. "No, thank you. I'll just get my stuff then." This time, when he was left alone, Cedric reached forward and picked me up. His hands were red and there were rough hacks at uneven intervals across the flesh of his fingers and palms. Despite this, it did not seem to cause him pain to touch me. I have learned that there are two types of people: those who pick up a book with a genuine interest and an intent to read the story contained within, and those who pick up a book as an act in and of itself. Of course I've lost my place. And are in fact disinterested in the world that lies within its covers. These, in my opinion, are those who have no interest in commitment. Cedric slotted into this latter category. I was already back on the coffee table when Laurel appeared with a textbook and a notebook. "I hope you don't mind working in here," she said. "Kitchen's a riot, I'm afraid." Cedric nodded, a little curtly, I thought. "Verbs," he said, and asked Laurel to conjugate those he had set for her homework. At the end of a rather tedious lesson, Laurel thanked her tutor and left the room, saying that her purse was in the hall. On her return, she thanked him again and held out a £20 note. Cedric was on his feet. He returned the canvas bag to his shoulder. I could see now that it had on its front panel an image of 3 books with different coloured spines, stacked on their sides. There was a quote in large letters underneath: "There is no friend as loyal as a book." In the years that have passed since, I have contemplated this phrase often, turning it this way and that. But back to Cedric. It was clear as they stood together that he was at least a foot taller than Laurel, who was tall. He took the money and with an awkward bow said, "Thank you." Despite his apparent desire to leave, Laurel offered to make him something to eat. She told him there was a pizza in the freezer that would be ready in no time. Cedric dismissed the kind offer. During the course of their lesson, I had pieced together some facts about this unusual pairing. One fact that was that Cedric was a postgraduate student who worked part-time in Laurel's care home. Another was that he was willing to forgo his apparent discomfort around women to earn extra money by helping his boss improve her French. A third was that notwithstanding Laurel's protestation that she remembered nothing from school and felt she must have been crazy to choose French as one of the hires she was doing at night school, she did, in fact, know rather a lot and was able to accurately answer every question she was asked. These are the things I thought I knew. Imagine then my astonishment when, through the open door, I witnessed the gauche young man lean forward and kiss his middle-aged student. To be fair, Laurel appeared to share my shock. Her initial surprise, however, did not seem to prevent her from participating in what turned out to be a rather lengthy and involved encounter. an encounter which led them both to undress while still in the hallway and resulted in Cedric following Laurel to an unknown location in her flat. I found the noise that subsequently emanated from what I presumed to be a room other than the kitchen to be something of a distraction. It seems Cedric was a rather more loquacious lover than he was a tutor. An hour or so later, Laurel returned, still naked, to the scene of their original tryst. She righted the coat stand and scooped up the pile of clothes on the floor. Cedric was next to appear, by now fully clad, if a little dishevelled. He crossed the hallway and took his leave. After a little more time had passed, Laurel returned to the sitting room, now in a pair of comfortable-looking blue pyjamas. She sat down on her usual sofa and was quiet at first. She reached forward and picked me up. She was silent as she held me in her hands. Her grip grew tighter. "What the fuck was I thinking?" she said, looking directly at me. Pulling me closer to her face so that I could feel her breath, softly and even more slowly, she said, "What the fuck was I thinking?" Her voice grew louder. "Really, Laurel," she said, even though she seemed to be addressing me. "Shagging the hired help, really? What the fuckity fuck were you fucking thinking? You stupid cow. What if he makes a complaint? Oh fuck, what if he complains?" It seemed as though she was asking me this question. I would have liked to have provided her with some comfort, had it been within my gift. I would have liked to have been able to point out that it was in actual fact Cedric who'd pressed his mouth to hers. Cedric who'd put his hands on her arms and had manoeuvred her body until it rested unsteadily against the coat stand in the corner, to which I had fortuitously, for the purposes of witness and reassurance, had a clear view. It had been Cedric, after the coat stand had toppled over, who had guided her body to the floor and had tugged petulantly at her clothing. Granted, she had participated. She had returned the kiss. She had pulled just as vigorously at his clothing. But it had been Cedric who had initiated the action that had occurred. It was not her fault that they had stumbled into a room across the way, leaving their clothes where they had fallen. Additionally, whilst he may have looked like no more than a child, he must have been at least in his 20s, so she need not torture herself with regards to his age. Despite my best efforts, Laurel still appeared to be trapped in a fury of self-loathing. She cycled through a number of insults. She called herself stupid, desperate, a desperate old bird who should know better, and a stupid, desperate old bird with terrible taste who should know better. Eventually, she made the aforementioned pizza and ate it whilst answering quiz questions that seemed altogether too simple for her.
And for our last reading of the night, I'm going to hand over to George Paterson, then to read from, is it Westerwick you're reading from?
Yeah, I'll read from Westerwick this time.
Okay,
It's the second of my books that's been published by Into Creative. The first book, The Girl, the Crow, the Knight and the Fighter, was this, I think it's the second book that was published by Into, but it was the first to get a banner. So I'm going to read a couple of short pieces from my second novel, Westerwick. My first book, for those who have read it, the few of you that have read it, it was set in 3 different continents over 4 different decades. This one's set at a very specific time in Glasgow, just pre-COVID. It's set in Glasgow's West End and on the fictitious island Westerwick of the title. So I'm going to read a little bit from the start and then I'm going to read a little bit more from a little bit further in. Okay. It has been said that Glasgow looks up to the West End, but the West End looks down on Glasgow. And from the summit of Partick Hill, the physical truth in that adage is undeniable. Where the tight, steep wind to the north of the clubhouse twists to its apex, the straighter, more fearsome climb from the Barton Road offers a lung-testing reward for all but the hard. At its base, the flat, high-sided blocks around the once industrious banks of the Clyde not only provide shelter from the winds which swirl up from the coast, but hide some of the city's more curious secrets. To its west, behind a barrier of corrugated rust, lies a cricket ground which conversely happened to be the birthplace of international football. If it wasn't for a minuscule plaque, a visitor might walk past contentedly, never knowing it was there. On its eastern side, just beyond the bustling student-infused streets of Byers Road, sits the splendour of Kelvin Grove. The park, with its lush hills and mossy ponds, its ancient trees and cherubs perched on the lips of the fountains, and the breathtaking gallery where the fat fiberglass Elvis and the Glasgow boys, Henry and Hornell, act as support to Salvador Dali's interpretation of heavenly majesty. While local adjutants of his Christ offered mercy to the celebrity suicides and the well-heeled poisoners like Madeline Smith, the countless stolen souls upon whose scarred backs the square mile of murder were built weren't afforded the same courtesy. The cloak of the dear green place's respectability has always been mottled in sanguine, hidden in plain sight. While Edinburgh has a history of torturing those it considers monsters, a cursory look at any West Coast tabloid will confirm that Glasgow chooses to venerate theirs. The Lord may judge, but this town doesn't. The book is very different to the previous book in the way that the first book was about friendship and about the bonds that friendship has. This one's a very different story based around a rather peculiar little twisted manipulative troika between Thomas Leven, a young damaged lawyer, Mira Berglund, who is his former boss, and Angus John McMillan relationship with his father. So he's heading down to a place near Weems Bay to visit his father for a sort of final showdown with him before he can proceed with his life. Thomas checked his phone. He received no messages since he'd left the flat, took the subway, then boarded the bus. West Stewart Street, Brampton Station, McInroy's Point, breathe. We're all going to die, I accept it, but I'd rather it wasn't now. But if it had to be, better make it a quick one, like Mum. Slow, then sudden, violent, before the angels know you're gone, before I remember exactly what I did last night. Come on, driver, you know you want to. It's Saturday morning, the roads are as dead as your chance of a promotion. Take the bus past the bend, too sharp, onto the flats with no purchase. So sink like a fucking bollard just dropped from the sky and landed in the mud and the seaweed. Race to the bottom. Me, the driver, the teenage goth with the bassy thrash, bleeding from her cheap earphones, the cheery old boy with a cap who won't shut up, the stressed dad taking his 3 demanding kids down the coast for the day. But Mum lets me use her phone, Mum lets me do that. Too fucking bad. Your mum's in Craig fucking Tara this weekend. Her latest neck tattoo, Turkish tooth, beard, gin, monkey. She'll have to do with me. 100% certain he'd take the blessed release of suffocation by sand right now if it was offered. When Thomas took the call to say that his mother, weakened by 20 months of chemotherapy, had stepped in front of the 358 Ayrshire Flyer, the first breath he took without her being in his world brought back the scent of the coast to him. He closed his eyes and held on to happier memories as long as he could. Long walks to Seamill, longer ones to Largs. Its rough, jagged coastline he knew like the bones in her hand, the hands which once held his. Tight but tender. But that was then. The last time he was here, her lifeless appendage was pained, bent and knotted, already slipping away. Ice cream, birds, hundreds of birds. The carousel with the bus, never the sports car or the jet fighter, always the bus. In Thomas's little mind, he was the conductor. No one could come near him. He'd drop his voice and speak like his father, brusque, curt commands to other children. No, not like this. Keep away, I'm in charge. Beat it. Following her first invasive procedure, Thomas's mother told him the truth about his adoption as a month-old babe, a burden she was too weak to carry any longer. Insisting their love was as genuine as any between a mother and a son, she tearfully begged for his forgiveness. Wishing to spare her feelings, Thomas acquiesced, though in private it led him to question whether his entire life to that point had been one great lie. Thank you.
I did not swear once.
No, you didn't. I'm going to, your brother might have shown it. I'm going to open up to questions at some point, so just to let you know that, because I know you haven't had that so far, but I wanted to ask all of you about how much of yourself goes into your fiction. Let's start with you, Gillian, because I think there's a lot in Brodie that is, you're not self-autobiographical.
Yeah, I think so. So having a narrator as an object might seem like an odd thing to do, but I wanted to have a narrator who had that perspective because I have multiple sclerosis, and at points I've had long periods of bed rest where life would come to me to visit me in a bedroom up 17 steep stairs and then would go away again, and I couldn't follow the action. So I thought it would be really interesting to have a narrator who was in that similar situation, who had to make a lot of stuff up and who was always the observer rather than the participant in the action. So yeah, in that regard.
And George, similar to you, I mean, Westerlick's a very dark book, so I don't know if you want to say how much of yourself is in the book. However, is that the case? I mean, you, some of yourself must be in there in terms of whether it's either people you know or scenarios that have happened to you and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
that's part of the process.
Yeah, there's a couple of elements in the book that do ring true with me, but I try to keep my own dark side away from the page. No, it's been very different from the previous one, where I sort of invested a lot of my own time, and I felt my own personality was coming through in some of the characters. This one, only the darker elements of my own character were coming through in this one, and it wasn't really a choice that I was happy taking at the time.
And David, yourself, I mean, you said you were in Amsterdam and Femke's set in Amsterdam, but is there more than that? Is there often, even in your poetry, a personal side to it?
Yeah, the first book I had published, it was called Rousseau Moon back in 2000, and when I started writing that, I didn't think it would be published. It was really the first thing I'd written since I was at school, writing essays. And there's half of that is a novella, and it was really autobiographical. I changed wee bits, like I've got 3 older brothers, and in the book I've got 2 older brothers. One, Brian, is here, one, Stephen. I didn't put James in the book, and James said to me one turned around to me and said, I'm Stephen in the book, haven't I? I said, no, that's Stephen. He's not here tonight. More seriously, I suppose, Femke's a bit, there's more fiction in Femke, I think, than in any of the other writings. Prendergast Falls a bit different. It's more like life choices, and I always started off like, if it's kind of like myself, but I'd made different choices, got into business instead of, creative life. But as it goes to childhood, I actually just used experiences from my own childhood, because these are the things that really stick in your mind, like, walking from East Kilbride to Strathaven to meet a girl in a park,
And you mentioned there, Rousseau's Moon was the first thing you'd written since school? And
Well, apart from poetry.
Yeah, right. Yes, you could do that. Now that sounds, to get that published, first bit of fiction, it's unusual, I think, and we'll talk to the other two and see what their experience has been.
Yeah, very unusual, but it was, I'd seen something in the paper that Neil Wilson Publishing had got, it was like a $250,000 lottery money, and it created a new imprint called 11/9, before 9/11. And I thought, well, the thing about when you're signing off to publishers is that they've already got thousands of manuscripts swimming around. I thought, well, they won't have any yet because this is a new imprint. So I took a chance, and I said, and they really liked it. I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to have to finish it now. So,
And you've been published more than the others. Have you found it different every time?
Yeah, it's just weird. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's coincidence. Like the publisher of my novel, The Ghost of Alice Fields, and a book about Samuel Beckett that I wrote, and a collection of poetry. It's just a Greenwich Exchange. That was because I had written a review of one of their books, and the publisher really liked the review and tried to get in touch with me and found out I was a poet and stuff, and asked to see my work. So yeah, it can be all sorts of coincidences. Yeah.
George, as you said, both your books are within two, but have you found that different? Each one was different? Did you learn things from the first one that you then took on?
In the writing or
All parts of the process, whether it was publishing side of things or whether it was even publicity side of things?
Yeah, the difference between the first one and the second one was marked. It took me 4 years to write the first book, and it took me maybe a year and a half to write the second. But the 4 years that I spent on the first, on the Gillian, the Crow, and the Fight, and I didn't really know what I was going to be doing with it. So I had a real freedom to just explore and see where it took me, and I loved that. Conversely, with Westerwick, I knew where I was taking it. I knew what I wanted to do with it, and I wanted to get there as quickly as I could before the ideas started going. There was a few issues that I had. My son took ill during the writing of Westerwick, and that stopped me writing for a little while. But when he was on the mend, I got back into it, and I dived much deeper into the darker elements of the protagonist's character than I intended to. So both those books are very, very different. When it comes to the marketing of them, The Girl, the Crow just took off and just went and had a life of its own, and it just caught me by surprise, and maybe caught Stephen a bit by surprise as well. No, he says no. And this is just out of the trap, so I'm not really sure where it's going at the moment. So just excited to find an audience for something so different.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gillian, yourself, this is your debut. What's been the journey to this point to get published? There's been lots of other things. I know you did a writing course as well, which is interesting.
Yes, I actually wrote Brodie as part of a doctorate, so I was looking at the relationship between object and illness, with specific reference to multiple sclerosis. So it's a practices research doctorate, which means that your actual practice is part of your research. Yes, I did that. So I started the doctorate in 2017, started Brodie at the same time. I'd had the idea for Brodie for years. So that I think we've spoken before, Alistair. Years earlier, I had a huge episode of MS where I lost the feeling from my toes to my chest over a weekend. So I got sent to my bed and was there for months. And that was when I had this idea about this really distant narrator, because I did a degree in English. I've been writing all my life since I was very little. So it was natural to be thinking about writing and to be doing writing. So then years later, doing the doctorate, Brodie had been in my head for at least a decade. So I wrote Brodie really in 7 months, 2017 to 2018, which was important for me because the centenary for Muriel Spark was 2018. She was born in 1918. So I kind of had this thing where I'm quite obsessed with numbers and focused on things like that. So I wanted to do it. So then the rest of the doctorate took me the rest of the 2 and a bit years to do, because it's a 3-year doctorate. Yeah, so that's how I did it. And you're not allowed to do anything with your book whilst you're going through the doctorate. So after I had submitted, you're not allowed to do, it couldn't be published, nothing could happen with it. So I submitted in the September of 2020 again, because I'm obsessed. I started in September of 2017, submitted the September of 2020. So in the back end of that year, my Viva was in the January, so you were allowed to start doing something as long as you didn't publish. So I sent out to a few agents thinking nobody's ever going to, I am nobody and nothing, so nobody, but got a couple of responses back quite quickly, and one wanted to sign me, so I got signed very quickly. I thought, oh, this is easy, what was everyone talking about? So then it was the Liverpool Literary Agency, so she sent out Brodie. I had to wait till I passed my Bible with no corrections, because I'm a wee lassie vacancy and I'm very competitive with myself, so that was important to me. So I did that, and then she was allowed to send it out, and she sent it out to six different publishers, and the feedback was really interesting, beautiful writing. Yeah, nobody knows anything about her, and how weird is that it's an object that's narrating it and we don't think we can sell it. So she waited another year, did the same thing, sent out to 6 more fancy big publishers, and they said the same thing. It got to the second stage with one of them, but like, yeah, no, who is she, what's she doing, why is it written by an object? So I thought, well, screw publishing, excuse my language. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to do it myself then. Again, wee lassie vacancy, not really thinking, and I've got a pal who knows Stephen, so it's like, oh, go and speak to my friend. So I said to Stephen, right, I'm not interested in being published because, you know, publishers have rejected me, I want nothing to do with them. Somehow I'm going to figure out how to do this myself. But yeah, it shows how much I knew, and I would never have published it myself. It was how ridiculous, what was I thinking? But I'm so delighted because Stephen's definitely the best place for Brodie.
You've obviously scared them now by running down at the front earlier on. You're saying lovely things about you, Stephen. Has anyone got any questions before I've got loads of questions I can keep on asking, but I think it would only be fair to kind of open it up to you guys. And if you don't, I'm happy to crack on.
So Gillian, why was it Jean Brodie that was the object? What was it that was the connection that made it the narrator for your book?
I'll just quickly repeat that in case you didn't hear it at the back. Why Jean Brodie? Why the book as the object?
Yeah, so the Crown of Miss Jean Brodie. So I had this idea, I wanted an object, and then I didn't know what kind of object. I thought maybe an umbrella that passed through hands, and then I realised I love books, I read books, I pass books, I get books passed to me, and then I thought, what book? And my favourite book is The Crown of Miss Jean Brodie. So it's kind of, I read it when I was a teenager, when I was a young teenager, I then studied it with my favourite English teacher, so I'm quite obsessed with Muriel Spark, I've read loads of her stuff. So it just felt like the perfect object, and I could just imagine, and every time I was writing, I wrote in a library, so I would just go to the library every day and write, and I would take a copy of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, almost like a talisman for me, and somehow I just channeled Muriel Spark, who I'm sure actually would have hated Brodie, but anyway, let's not mention that.
Yeah, she was quite choosy about things that she liked.
Yes, I don't know.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, I'm interested in, because I review books, I think I've reviewed all your books. Are you ever surprised by reviews in general or receptions that the books get that you think, I didn't mean that, I didn't think that was there or anything like that? George, start with yourself.
Yeah, some of the reviews you get are very surprising. They point out things that you didn't think of yourself, and I really shouldn't say that kind of thing, but yeah, I've been very lucky so far with the reviews I've had of both books. So yeah, I'm quite positive about reviewers. Big thumbs up for anyone.
But also this idea that once you've written a book and it's published, it's out there, folk will just take, yeah, exactly.
I can't do anything about it. It's the ones that are online, the Amazon reviews and Goodreads, whatever you do, don't read them. They're just bizarre and mad, but you know, they count towards your fabled score, but some of those ones are just off the charts. They really aren't, but what can you do?
Is that kind of thing, David, because I see you've been, ancient, saying you've been writing for ages, but has things changed in that sense? I mean, you know, George is talking about having to get online reviews and get Amazon reviews and all these things. I mean, is that important? Maybe not to you, it might be to your publisher, I'm not sure, but is it?
I don't know. I'll tell you something that surprised me in a review I got. Was a guy called Alistair Braidwood, right? No, and Stephen mentioned this in a radio interview, that Prendergast Falls, like as I said, it's the story told two different directions. And you made a point about the subtle differences in the wording,
Yeah.
and it's meant to be exactly the same, but just in a different direction. So I am afraid to look at the book in case I made a mistake.
Is that right?
That's,
I did not know that. I thought
yeah.
it was a
But it must be, and people have mentioned that to me, and I think it's just the effect that you imagine that the words are different, but they're identical.
Oh, that's really interesting. I've got lots of questions after that. Anyway. But Gillian, what about, as you Brodie's an unusual book, and you had that response from publishers, but you sent it out. Now that it's out, what's the response been like, and have you been surprised by it?
Yeah, I'm always surprised when anyone likes my book, which is really nice. So everything's been very positive, and yeah, I've been delighted. I don't think anyone's read anything into it that I didn't intend. I think some people who are Spark fans quite enjoy, because there's quite a lot of homage to Spark in here. So the first character's called Violet, because that's the colour of the Marcia Blaine uniform, and there's loads of stuff like that. So I quite like when people point that out to me.
And there's also, as you say, numbers are a big thing, and that runs through the book as well, doesn't it? If you're a mathematician, you might quite like it.
Yes, and Spark, I think, and I didn't, it was only when I started thinking about Brodie that I'd read The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie so often, and I've taught it. But I then, she really repeats numbers. She does a lot of repetition, but numbers are a thing. So then I just went way in with numbers. So I've got 6 women, 6 sections, 6 chapters, 6 repeats all the way through, because 6 repeated all the way through The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
And I mean, we're coming close to the end of the night, but I just wanted to ask all you about writing characters. This is probably quite a big question to end with, but approaching writing characters, how do you begin, if that's not a silly question from someone who doesn't write fiction? David, let's start with yourself. How do you begin to create your characters?
Well, the character of Femke, that was when I was living in Amsterdam, and my first job there. I was teaching English as a second language, and I was I was near the Oster Park in the east of the city, and I was kind of crossing the road to go to the offices where I was teaching. I wasn't wearing a suit, but kind of dressed smartly in my little briefcase and everything. And as I was about to cross the road, there was this sort of young woman who walked past with a hoodie up, and she was walking a dog. It was kind of looked like an Alsatian. I only saw her for a second or two, but in that moment I thought, I wish I was her. I wish I was living her life and whatever she's going to be doing, and not crossing the road to teach English. And it was almost like my soul passed into hers or hers into me. And that was a few sentences came into my head back in 2001, and then when that was published, just.
So does real life often affect then the characters? Whether it's people you know or chance encounters or things like that.
That was a weird one, a chance encounter, and it was fiction. I was imagining her life, but I mean, all your own. It's still autobiography, really, because it's your own preoccupations that go into the creation of the characters.
George, what about the characters of both your books? You get influences, I'm guessing, from other media as well.
Yeah, well, in the first book, The Girl, the Crow, the Knight, and the Fighter, 2 of the characters are actually real people, so I had to try and create a fictional friendship that didn't exist between the writer Henry Miller and the boxer Sonny Liston. Their paths didn't cross, but I had some texts, some important pointers about both of those people. The first one from Henry Miller was about these letters he wrote to a lady called Brenda Venus, who's still alive and she's still on Twitter and things like that. But he was in his dotage and she was a young showgirl, and he was writing these letters to her. And I just, the theme and tone of them were very, very different from his earlier writing. So I thought, right, I'd like to write something about Henry Miller and his, the regrets he may have had of, looking back over his life. But also with Sonny Liston, for anyone who knows boxing, Sonny Liston was, one of the most famous, one of the most notorious heavyweight boxers of all time. He was a world champion, but there's not much known about him. Nobody knows, even Sonny Liston himself didn't know when he was born. And I read an article by Stuart Cosgrove. Stuart Cosgrove wrote an article about someone listening coming to Scotland to visit, and the response that listening who'd been a jailbird beforehand and was you set up for a life of violence and crime, and the reaction he got from the people of Scotland was remarkable, and it made him feel as if it was the first time he'd ever belonged anywhere. So that got my mind thinking. So when it comes to characters, those two were primed for me. With the new book, with Westerwick, they're very different. When I'm creating the characters, those three different characters, I had a visual representation of them first before I had the actual character themselves, and the plot helped to form the character.
Right. So you can grab onto individuals.
Yeah, and the plot will basically mould the character as it goes along. So you can either go character-led or plot-led, but I went plot-led with these ones. And I felt it really helped with all three of those main characters.
Can I just say, Stephen sent me an extract from your first book, and see, like, before when it was a manuscript, and say, what do you think of this? And the thing of like having Henry Miller as a character and writing in the style of Henry Miller, I thought that's a genius idea, and I'm going to steal it. I want to write the unwritten book of Samuel Beckett.
Yeah, I would love to do something with Beckett's character. That would be quite interesting. And Beckett was one of the influences, because it was about
Miller, actually.
But it was about the unusual friendships. The unusual friendship between Liston and Miller didn't happen, but the theme of unusual friendships was really important to me. And Beckett had a very unusual friendship with Andrew the Giant. Bizarrely, Beckett was a friend of Andrew the Giant. Seemingly, Andrew's father used to work for Beckett on his some property he had, and Beckett used to drive Andrew to school in the village in the morning, and they bonded over a shared love of cricket, strangely. So definitely
there's a film in that.
Absolutely. We'll join up.
And Gillian, we know why you chose Brodie, but what about the other characters in the book? Has anyone ever said, "Oh yeah, that's me," or have you had any of that kind of feedback from people you know?
My best pal since I was wee, Claire's getting a bit worried now. No, I don't think so, but I can only speak for myself, but characters definitely are bits and pieces of all the people you've ever met. And I was a writer of short fiction before I ever did anything as long as Brodie. And a phrase will come to mind, and then a character will join the phrase, and then the character just grows and grows. And I think Katy's also a writer of short fiction, and it's just then these people start inhabiting your head, and I've just got so many, and then they come and go, and I go back to them because a lot of my writing's just for fun, just for me. So yeah, there's a lot of people in my head.
A lot of people, a lot of voices in your head.
Some of them got into Brodie, there's still a lot more.
Well, thanks to all three. That's been a fascinating chat. I'm really interested to see there's no individual way to be a writer or to be you come to it from different things, and your experiences are all different. I think that's right across the board. In a moment, these writers will be out there, you can buy their books and they'll sign them, and you can chat to them if you've got questions you didn't want to ask here, you can do all that. Before that though, I'd just like to say thanks to Strathaven Hotel for putting this on. Thanks to Into Creative and We Could Send Letters for this collaboration and allowing this to happen, which has been fantastic. Thanks to Arthur and the sound and for helping out. And thanks to yourselves for coming out a Friday night. It's much appreciated, absolutely. But please give a big round of applause to Katy, David, Gillian, David, George, and Douglas, and Matilda, who was there earlier on. Thank you very much.